All right, let's talk about Obsessive. So Obsessive is the oldest song on the album. It was originally written on August 11th, 2020, and it was recorded around then too originally. But it went through so many phases, I re-recorded it multiple times just to try to get it to sound good. And the reason I didn't release it way back then is because I knew this is not a single. You know, this isn't something you're going to be like playing in the club or at a party or anything like that, or in the car. It's just something to listen to, digest, understand, and then move on, you know? I don't expect people to be bumping this one, you know? So it really felt like something that needs to be on an album as sort of a deep cut, you know, and just something that people can hear when I put this project out. So I saved it, I sat on it for a long time, and I'm glad it's finally out. As with all the songs on this project, huge shout out to Jay Paris for his help with all the mastering and mixing that went into this. But I also want to give a shout out to my friend Sebastian, who helped out a lot with the mixing stages on this one. We spent a lot of time in the studio at night just like working on making this sound as good as it possibly could. And so I really appreciate that, so thanks Sebastian. So when I came back to this song as I was putting the album together, I was going to call it August 11th, 2020, because that's when it was written, and not all of it necessarily applies right now. It really is about a moment in time. The second verse especially is about a specific moment that I experienced. But streaming services apparently have a problem with songs with dates in the title, and I didn't want to risk it for my first album, so I decided to change the name to Obsessive. And also for like the year that this song was in the works before I was putting the album together, I was basically just calling it the song about my OCD. So Obsessive is closer to that than August 11th, 2020 is, so I'm fine with the new name. So the hook, the part that's repeated at the beginning and the end, is just sort of there to set the scene, to sort of give an insight into who I am, what my life is like. I do wake up early every day, or at least I try to wake up early every morning, to feel the sort of same energy. I'm just not good at like changing. I really value having like habits and like a consistent lifestyle, so waking up early is sort of one way that manifests. And I might be slightly obsessive about that, but I wouldn't quite call that OCD. The actual OCD stuff is what the first verse is about. So for those who don't know, OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder. It's a mental disorder that a lot of people have, including myself. I was diagnosed in 5th grade, which is what I mentioned in the verse. And it started to get really bad around then. I had this issue with reading. When I was a kid, like younger, I would read books really fast. I was, really into reading. I would read super often. And then 5th grade, my OCD really sort of manifested itself. And when I would read, I would feel like I had to reread lines over and over. Not because I actually missed any words or anything like that, but because something in my mind, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, is like, if you don't read this over again, something will go wrong. Particularly for me, I was super nervous about being sick, especially throwing up. I had a big fear of that. And when I would get nervous in my stomach, I would always feel like I was going to throw up, even though I rarely did. But I would always feel that way. So if I am reading a book and something in my mind goes off and tells me, you did that wrong, I get all nervous and I feel like I'm not honestly reading or whatever it is. And so I would feel like I would need to reread it. And that's the compulsion, just rereading. I remember one time it took me like basically an hour to get through like 2 pages, which is ridiculous because I was a fast reader when I was younger, and I knew I wasn't bad at reading. I just had this thing that was blocking me. And so this continued. 5th grade through 7th grade was the especially bad period for my OCD, and my parents did take me to a few therapists because they wanted to help me get through it. And around 7th grade was the last time I went to therapy to this day. I had a really bad experience where I just got really upset at my therapist, and I don't know if she really did anything wrong, but it to me felt like she wasn't listening or understanding. And so I just got really, really upset and was like, I never want to go back to therapy again. And so my parents basically said, fine, if you don't want to go back to therapy, you're going to need to fix your OCD on your own. And so that's sort of the end of the first verse in this song, right? I really respect my parents for doing that because it was like they sort of gave me the opportunity to take matters into my own hands. And if it didn't work, they would take me back to therapy for sure. But I really did make good progress with it. And it was getting to the point where my OCD really didn't affect my daily life that much. It would do small things to me that aren't a major deal. Like I just won't touch my face in public unless I've washed my hands immediately before. I also don't like eating food with my hands. I shouldn't say I don't like it. It's really more my OCD just does not want me to do that at all. And that's sort of where I was at. So OCD is a lifelong thing, so it'll always manifest itself in my life in one way or another, but for quite a few years, it was manifesting itself in really small, sort of negligible ways that just seem like small quirks. Nothing that actually got in the way of me functioning as a person. 2020 came around, and COVID hit. And that's what the second verse is about. Everything sort of changed. My OCD did get a lot worse in the beginning of COVID. I really would wash my hands more obsessively than I regularly did, again, for the goal of not being sick. And in this verse I sort of say, like, it's just weird to have all these obsessions and then suddenly have them be validated by all of society. Like for a while, I would have to do these things sort of in secret. Like I would have to, be really careful about things I touch and stuff like that. A little bit secretively, but now everyone was doing it, which was very weird. And that's for good reason. Like, COVID is a dangerous virus, and I think people were doing the right things to protect themselves from it, or at least the best things we knew how to do. It just so happened that those things were really things that brought up my OCD. And so the day I wrote this song, it was inspired by a specific instance where I left the bathroom in my house, and after washing my hands, I touched the bathroom doorknob, which I had sort of been avoiding by maybe using my sleeve or something like that to open it, instead of touching it directly with my hands. And I got really nervous. I was like, oh, this isn't good. I should go back and wash my hands again. But I didn't want to. I was like, this feels like I'm taking my OCD to too much of an extreme, and it's not where I want it to go. And so I really just talked myself out of it. And then I sat down and wrote this song. It helped me get through it. I didn't wash my hands for another hour and a half, and when I did, it was for a separate reason to, opening the door. So the song ends on kind of that triumphant note, I can get through this even if it takes a long time. And right now, in 2022, I can say that my OCD is in a pretty good place. I am definitely handling it better than I was at the beginning of COVID, and I'm not as stressed out about it as I was back then. But this is still an important aspect of my life, and I feel like it's really good that it's on the album, and I'm super happy I'm able to share it with you guys. And if any of you guys have OCD, you can get through this. It's a lifelong mental thing, but you can get it to a point where it's manageable. And that's where I am right now, and it feels good, so you got this. Anyway, thanks for watching, and thanks for listening.